nurses are given technology and then we have to adapt our workflows to fit the technology. It should never be that way. That is completely backwards. It should be technology to enable our processes and our workflows, not hinder them and create more workarounds.
We're excited to have this conversation and engage with Heather Hudnall. She is the Chief Nursing Informatics Officer for NTT Data. And she comes from a nursing background, has had her nursing license for 15 years, has done care at the bedside, but has also worked for leading technical institutions like Cerner and Infor before the journey here. So what's really exciting about this conversation is getting into some of the issues and challenges that are facing nurses today, why 85% of nurses are considering leaving bedside care for other roles, and really working, we want to speak out to the people with nursing backgrounds that are working in technical leadership and how to be peers to your organizations and help you meet your strategic goals, as well as teach other leaders who might not have clinical backgrounds but find themselves in leadership positions at healthcare systems as well, and how to better receive and work and operate with fellow clinical leaders and keep the clinician's voice forward in decisions that impact patient care. But with that, Heather, anything you'd like to say before we get started?
Got it, sure. I want to start a movement. Nurses inspire nurses, make our voices heard. So I really think we all band together, we can really make it happen and inspire everyone to make healthcare better for everyone, not just the nurses and patients, but all of us.
Well, I hope that we're a proud part of that movement. Can you talk about your personal journey and what got you to make the shift from bedside care into technical leadership?
I made the move from bedside nursing into health tech about a decade ago. And the driving factor behind that was at bedside, I saw and experienced firsthand everything that was wrong and broken in healthcare. And sadly, technology was a big part of that problem. I remember going through numerous go lives with different technology that we are told this is the greatest thing ever. It's going to make you more efficient. It's going to help you deliver better, safer patient care. Well, oftentimes what the exact opposite happened. It caused more frustrations, workarounds, issues, increased my workload. And a lot of times I'd look at it and think, well, who actually designed this? And did they get any input from the people who'd be using it day in and day out, like the nurses? That's really why I left the bedside to go work into healthcare technology. I decided I wanted to be part of the solution to fix this and bring my expertise to make a big impact.
Well, that's tremendous, and it really makes me think about a stat that we've been using, which is that 30% of the healthcare workforce in the hospital environment is nurses, but they occupy less than 1% of the boardroom seats. So thinking about those design challenges, thinking about the technologies that filtered through as the greatest thing ever, but then turned out to be quite the opposite of that. Does the lack of nurses and clinicians at those upper echelons in leadership, does it have an impact on patient care?
I really do believe that it does. I saw those same stats in that study, and it looks like most of the hospital boards, they come from a finance background. So no wonder healthcare is driven by profits. I really think, those people who have never cared for a patient in their life are the ones making those decisions that impact clinicians and patients. And maybe they're making these decisions. It might look good on paper, but let's be real, for those healthcare staff actually on the floor delivering care, it just doesn't work. I mean, half the time we don't even have time to take a lunch break, let alone, follow 5 additional steps. And that's being conservative. A lot of times it's, do this great, wonderful thing. And it's going to cause us 27 different workarounds on average for any new tech that is implemented.
Great example, great story on that. And I'm just wondering if there's any examples that you've seen of decisions that could have been a whole lot better had a nurse voice been included.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. There's too many to actually talk about, but I can admit when I've made a decision that maybe was the wrong decision. So, in one of my previous roles, where I was designing and implementing clinical mobility and communication device, we would do discovery with all of the clinicians, get their input or input on the design and development of the solution workflows. Well, we made the mistake of not talking to every single unit. So we came up with a workflow for alerting a physiological monitor alerts to be sent to these phones. Worked great in most of the units except for the NICU. Those nurses are right there at the patient's bedside. That's a very critical, sensitive patient population. All those loud noises and disruptions just did not work. So we had to go back to the drawing board and figure out what specific workflow would work for them. So, I mean, it's not just a one size fits all. You have to look at, all your different users and even the different types of units to design and develop and roll out the implementation of the technology to work best.
It just seems natural that as we climb up the echelons, and thank you for being vulnerable about a decision that you made, because like as we climb up and we're separated from patient care and separated from the bedside, then without that constant clamor, without that constant voice, it can be easy to fall into the trap of not including those voices and decisions. So can you talk about a strategy to help include those frontline voices in the decisions, especially as you've moved up these echelons?
So yes, so you're right. Very often leaders, I can tell you, it's been a long time, very long time, a decade since I've actually worked on the floor in the front lines. A lot has changed. So what I've seen work and what I advocate to try and do even to this day in my current role is I asked to go out and walk the floors. I actually put on my scrubs and walked around in ED, talked to the nurses, meet them where they are. Because you're right, we are under immense pressure. There's tons of staffing shortages. It's just going to get worse. They don't have time to come, leave and come to a meeting. So meet them where they are. Take a walk in their shoes, round the floors. Sit there and observe their workflows, get real time feedback on, and their input on what they're dealing with, how to address their challenges. And I also recommend allow your vendors to come in and do that, as well as health tech developers. I mean, this just provides a lot of opportunity and opens up the door to actually create meaningful, impactful technology that nurses actually want to use and that will actually make them more efficient and help them deliver better, safer care instead of doing the opposite, which happens more often than not.
So that's a really powerful example too, because I was asking from the perspective of, hey, you come from a nursing background and delivered bedside care, but you might like lose touch over time as you move through ranks of the organization. But the example that you shared is something that a non-clinical leader could endeavor to do as well. So it sounds like something not only to reach out to the people that have the nursing backgrounds, but that sounds like really good advice for any leader within a healthcare system.
I've seen lots of great feedback from nurse leaders who actually will go do that. The feedback they get is just tremendous. And I'm telling you, nurses are happy, more than happy to share their insights and their ideas. When they found out I was also a nurse and that I was going around and, asking, hey, what do you need? What can I do to help? How can we solve this together? They saw me as, a trusted partner, but also when they found out I was a nurse, they shared a lot of information with me that maybe they're not as willing to share with their leaders. So that's another thing. You should foster open communication, collaboration, build that trust so that they're not scared to speak up. And honestly, that's the sad truth is a lot of nurses they're scared to speak up these days because they don't know what's going to happen. Or if they do, maybe they're going to get technology that's even worse than what they already have. So that's always a fear in the back of our minds.
So we're talking about the overall inclusion of nurses in the process. We're talking about bringing clinician voices up to leadership levels, and I wonder if you've done some thinking on what's at stake if we continue down the other path where those voices aren't included? What do you see as a consequence of that happening for a health system or an insurer?
Well, there's quite a few, I'm afraid. So your tech implementation transformation can fail. I actually read a report from class that showed 70 to 80% of tech transformations fail because they didn't fully address people or process needs. And we talked about, the high burnout, turnover. Well, you know that technology is probably one of the biggest frustrations for healthcare workers, especially nurses. Another study showed that 40% of clinician stress and burnout is attributed directly to the EHR systems that they use. So, we can't afford to keep burning out our healthcare workers. I mean, they're leaving, constantly. I saw another stat. There's so many out there that by the end of 2025, we're going to be short another 2.1 million nurses. So think of that. I mean, if nurses aren't there, who's going to take care of you? I tell everyone all the time, I'm like, don't get sick enough to have to be admitted to the hospital because who knows if someone's going to be there to take care of you. Look at everything holistically, people, process, and technology. And a big mistake that's always made is nurses are given technology and then we have to adapt our workflows to fit the technology. It should never be that way. That is completely backwards. It should be technology to enable our processes and our workflows, not hinder them and create more workarounds.
Yeah, that's a major sticking point with me too. In many domains, when people are purchasing technology for technology's sake, when something just sounds cool, and they're purchasing for that reason, versus to enhance the strategy or enhance the experience for their people who are actually delivering on this stuff.
Exactly. It's like, hey, look at this great new tool that we got for you, but it doesn't fit into our workflows. It adds extra things to do. So it's like they're pushing the new technology on nurses and then asking them to change the way they do things and adapt to this new technology. And it definitely should not happen that way.
I'm glad that we're reading the same studies. By the way, we're reading the same reports on like the presence of clinical leaders in boardrooms or lack thereof. In this case, like as you've risen through the ranks, I mean, you're in that C-suite position now, and have talked to people in all kinds of roles and things like that. And some of the advice that I'm seeking, especially looking at all the people here who might have nursing backgrounds and might be facing blockers or organizational challenges from non-clinician peers. Do you have advice for the clinician who is who's working within a system where they might be the minority voice?
So, interesting story. You really have to be inspired. So, I'm going to tell you my inspirational story. So, I work at NTT Data, massive technology company, and we just merged with NTT Limited. So, huge company, systems integrator. We do everything, you name it. I am the first CNIO at this company. And why? I advocated for the need and have proven the value I bring and why we need a clinical leader in this role to impact and have a voice and a seat at the table in healthcare decisions, and be able to talk that talk with our clients so that we can deliver better services and products to them. So I recommend, make your voices heard, speak up, try something new, do something that's never been done. It was a bit scary for me to push this and ask, and you know what? It paid off, and I'm happy to say I'm the first CNIO at NTT Data.
That's extremely refreshing. I can only imagine the scary part, right? Where you don't know how these ideas are going to be received, and like might not know the strategy and how to communicate that and move to that position. So could you share a little bit on the scary part, the overcoming the fear to start advocating for yourself and advocating for the people that you want to advocate for? How did you overcome that fear and overcome those blockers?
I'm an adrenaline junkie, so I'm driven by fear. So I kind of saw it as, let's I'll bring it on. Let's take this challenge. I also had support. That's the thing is, I had a support system, many people backing me. They saw the value that I brought, and I did a lot of just, I call it crash course healthcare enablement for maybe some of my colleagues who didn't have a deep background and knowledge of healthcare and why we needed to, do the things that I was recommending. Now, I didn't say, it's my way is the best way, but hey, this is a perspective we need to look at. And I got involved in, I've done some podcasts and webinars and just showed the value in the industry of look at the success of these companies who have clinical leaders, just that credibility that we can bring and, the advice that we can offer. So, it took a little bit and, it wasn't always easy, but I just kept working at it and I proved myself.
Well, I'll say I think that you did something that's really hard for a lot of people to do, because a lot of people might become so frustrated with something, with the process, that it becomes, well, my way or the highway, guns blazing. By the time you address the challenge, it's already so pent up in your emotions that it becomes a battle. But your focus involved coalition building, involved one-on-one conversations and education on what's at stake. So by the time you're making the big pitch, there's a lot of support already built in. And I think that's just an important lesson to learn from change management from all kinds of perspectives and directions.
Yeah, I agree that change management is huge. Adoption and just, we have to disrupt healthcare without being disruptive is what I like to say.
So I'm curious about advice in other areas too, like just going a little bit deeper down this path of incorporating nurse voices. I'm wondering about like your overall strategy. Like as I said earlier, as you move further away from patient care, as you move up the upper echelons, it is harder to hear those voices. And I'm just wondering about any kind of strategic initiatives or the kinds of things that you do to make sure that nurses are being heard. Like we gave the example of walking the floor previously, but just curious about other strategies in terms of making sure that those voices are heard consistently.
Well, going back to what you said, I'm a huge advocate for having more nurses on hospital boards where, the decisions are made. So that's a big one. Let's keep pushing for that. Using focus groups. Yeah, I use social media a ton on just awareness of, hey, the voice of the nurse. Let's, nurses are doing these great things. If I see, impactful stories about nurses and the great things that they have done, I will share it. So I think just continuing to inspire and get that information, share. I say, education and just all the positive things that are happening. Let's get the word out. And I want to give kudos to Denver Health. I don't know if you guys have seen the post and article, what they did recently. They brought in their nurses to do a full redesign of their Epic EHR. They engaged them to identify all the documentation pain points. 'Cause like I said, the EHR is a big frustration point for nurses. And the outcome of what they did, they were able to decrease the overall amount of time nurses spend on documentation, admissions, and also saw an increase in timely documentation, nurse satisfaction. So, it's just great things like that are happening when you engage nurses. Your frontline clinicians are the ones who spend the most time with your patients. So, they are the best to give ideas and feedbacks on what they're hearing from the patients as well, so that they have a better experience. There's tons of studies out there showing that, if nurses are happy, satisfied in their jobs, that directly impacts the patient experience and ultimately your HCAP scores and reimbursement rates. So, like I said, it's really as simple as talking to those frontline clinicians that are taking care of the patients every single day. That's where you're going to get the most valuable information to be able to make improvements.
Heather, I just want to say that in this conversation, you brought up some amazing points and stories about the impact of clinician voices and decisions, and the challenge if those aren't brought to the table. What's at stake? And one of the parts that really hit me is just telling your story about being loud, being kind of an adrenaline junkie, but like breaking it out in a way that hopefully inspires people who might not feel like they're heard at their organizations to speak up in their rise through their careers and their advocacy for others. So I wanted to thank you for that, but I also wanted to ask you, I want to give you a superpower here. And this is something we ask all our guests is we give you a magic wand, the superpower to change one aspect about how healthcare is delivered. Could you tell me what that one change that you would make would be?
So I say stop treating healthcare like a business that's focused on profits and start actually treating it as a system of caring and health. But yeah, that'd be ideal. But a more feasible answer that we can make a real change is nurses. Like I said before, nurses know what's broken in healthcare, so we know how to fix it. So changing how the healthcare is delivered, I think, starts with empowering the people who deliver that care. Again, nurses. Do you know nurses have been voted the #1 most trusted profession for, I think, 20 consecutive years in a row? So I think it's time for the healthcare industry and leaders to start trusting nurses too and engage us and let us reimagine a better healthcare system for everyone.
Well, Heather, major thanks for coming on and sharing these stories and sharing the impact of nurses. I noticed like we run a little bit in the same circles, but for people who are new to Heather and want to follow you, what's the best way that people can keep in touch and keep hearing your thoughts and ideas?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me. I think my tagline is just Heather Hudnall, pretty easy. And then NTT Data, we're at a lot of the big healthcare events, and we're really engaged in focus groups, and so I'm part of a lot of those, as well as just email me, heather.hudnall@nttdata.com.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Just a heads up, you should be seeing an invitation coming out soon for a conversation with Julia Christ, who is the Chief Operating Officer and founder of Inbound Health. Inbound Health is a home health platform. So coming up later this month, we're going to get a little bit deeper into a discussion on the economics around home health, the impact that it has on care, and ultimately home health enablement for your healthcare systems. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.